that point about managing expectations. And it leads us nicely onto the sixth tip, Sam, which comes from you about speaking to your stakeholders about their business, not coming to them and speaking in terms of learning and training. So, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how do we understand the language our stakeholders use, what's important to them.
And again, this is about as positioning learning and development as a strategic partner and not a kind of service that delivers products. So often our conversations are stuck in learning and development and compliance and workshops. I think most of the time it's not because that's what we want to talk about in learning and development. It's because that's what our stakeholders think we want to talk about. And so early on in my career, I had a number of senior business leaders when I was a business partner to the overall department. And all of they were so engaged in learning and development that I'd have regular catch-ups with them, but they became kind of meaningless because we just talked about the same stuff over and over again. It was like, okay, who's attending the workshops? Okay, my numbers are a bit low. Who have I got in from my department lined up to go on the next leadership program? Okay, that's good. I'll have a conversation with them. And, how's our compliance looking? Okay. All of those usual things. And so to start with, I was like, oh, this is awesome. All of my stakeholders are super engaged in learning and development. But then I got kind of, I realized that I had no idea whether anything was making any difference to like their business. And I always felt like they were, what's the word? Almost just kind of like, appeasing me, like, oh, I know that learning and development is important, so I'm going to have this one-to-one with Sam because I know I probably should, and it's interesting and I care about it a little bit, but then I'm going to go back and talk about more important stuff, right, and talk about X, Y, and Z business thing. And so I kind of had that realization towards the end of the year. I reflected a lot over Christmas. I remember thinking, am I actually doing any good here? Like, I'm doing loads, but is any of it making any difference? And so kind of around the middle of Q1 the following year, I had all of those one-to-ones kind of booked in. And so I decided to kind of shift and said, look, we talk a lot about learning development. Here's a dashboard for all of that stuff that we normally talk about. You can read. If you're interested in it, just read it. Like, I'd rather talk to you about like your business. And I almost kind of was quite vulnerable and said, I feel a bit embarrassed because actually I don't really know what's going on in your business areas. I don't really know what keeps you awake at night, what your strategy is. And for me to do a better job, I want to. And so I asked all of them 3 questions. So one was, what are your key strategic priorities for your function department, right? Simple as. 2, what will people have to do potentially differently in order for you to achieve those strategic priorities that you have? And 3, what are you most worried about from a people perspective that people aren't going to be able to do, or that you've not seen from them before, or there's going to be a big change? And all of a sudden, the conversations were totally different. I learned way more about kind of what their business was all about, what they were doing. So essentially I found myself out in that situation. I realized, and the relationship I had, I started getting invited to more kind of leadership team meetings. And I genuinely felt like I started to be perceived as a kind of strategic partner versus, somebody who's just doing something that we should be interested in because we're supposed to be, right? To actually, I'm interested in this because I think it could actually help me deliver one of my own measures, right? So like when you start to talk to business leaders about their business and how you can help them deliver their objectives rather than how they can help you deliver your objectives, it's a world of difference in terms of kind of the conversations that you have and how effective they are.
Yeah, I love that. Lauren, Neil, any thoughts from you on how you sort of navigate that relationship, have those conversations where you are aligning more to the business problems as opposed to, like Sam said, trying to get people to help you reach your goals and making that shift to how do we help you reach your goals and actually what are your goals and problems in the first place?
Definitely. It's a huge check to the ego when you're working in learning and development and you realize that the thing that is your whole work life is not actually anybody else's goal. It's the path, it's the tool that everyone else is using to achieve what they want to do. So when we can have that mind shift to say, the numbers of people showing up or the skill that you can put on somebody's profile to say that they can do this or the certificate that they get, that's not actually what we're here to do. We're here to help the business succeed. We're here to help our people succeed. And our superpower that we bring to that is learning and development. And we need to be able to understand when to bring that superpower to bear. We need to understand when it's not actually appropriate for us to get involved, because you can't solve every problem with training, as much as we'd like to try. And so when you can start, like you said, Sam, getting curious about their business, what are they here to achieve? And then which of those things can you get involved and help them with? They're going to be booking meetings with you rather than the other way around. There's going to be no more duty. They'll be banging down your door to talk to you.
Mm.
So I think it's a fantastic way to approach it. And it's a really effective way to help the business.
Awesome. Neil, you must do this all the time, go and speak to people and have to find out quickly what the business objectives are and where learning plays into that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just agree with everything that Sam and Lauren have said. But to Lauren's point about when you realise you are not the centre of the universe, I remember once I was moving from a sales trainer role into L&D manager role, and there was a great L&D team there, and they were helping me like transition and build up my skills portfolio. And the L&D director said, she said, "Neil, you are not the star anymore. You are not standing in the room and people are not clapping for you. So you need to think about how you are going to help the business." And it just really, yeah, big check to the ego. And I go, okay, so how does L&D help a business? And this approach can be seen as a little callous sometimes, but it's almost about understanding that L&D will sit inside HR most likely, and it will be a cost center to the business. And the people, that SLT will sit down and they will have those conversations where they're thinking about what's the cost of this? If I'm an MD of a business unit and I have to look after my own budget, what's this costing me? And so it's important that L&D understands the finances in the business, understands things like what EBITDA is, unit economics, and then how you can go about saying, okay, so going right back to the start, here's our hypothesis, here's how we tested it, here's the initial outcomes. We've linked learning objectives to performance metrics. We've made a unitized monetary amount for the performance objective. And here's a, if not causated, but correlated, strong correlated ROI. And all of a sudden once you understand that, you start talking in terms like that, people do start sitting up. And so I kind of went in that direction for a long time until I realized I'd gone too far into the numbers. And actually, people do also care about things like if people are enjoying it and that they're happy and that they've had a good learning experience, without not forgetting that as you move towards the other one as well.